Is it a direwolf?
Yes.
But is it a direwolf?
Nuh-uh.
So, what is it really? Because I've seen so many just scientists and then just people that think they're scientists on TikTok and Instagram and Reels and Shorts and whatever, and articles just debating on what is it really, can it even be classified as that? Now there's debates on what you can and can't genetically identify something as if you're changing genes, and how many genes can you change before it's genetically classified as something else, or how many can't you change before it's still considered the original thing. But all these things have come from this, and it's very interesting. It's all very sciencey. But what is it really? Is it just a chicken nugget and a grey wolf that's compacted together and has made just a chicken nugget grey wolf, or is it an actual direwolf? And were its howls the first actual genetically identical direwolf howls that we've heard in 10,000 years? I don't know, but we need to find out. I have questions about it. You have questions about it. Hopefully this video can answer both of them. So let's get to it. So I watched the majority of the interview of Beth Shapiro with Joe Rogan. That dude's name is way too close to Ben Shapiro for me to not get that wrong at one point or another. But hey ho. So yeah, I've watched a little bit of that, and he is very involved with it. And well, I don't even know what he is to Colossal. He's like an ambassador or something. He's an AI like coder is what he does, I believe. So yeah, I watched that, and it gives a little bit more insight into the tooth and the skulls that they found, and also the stuff that they're doing with the mammoths and thylacine and stuff like that. So I know like a little bit more on this, but he didn't necessarily answer the question, because he kind of said they basically are direwolves, and we've changed the genes so specifically looking at what the difference is between the grey wolf and the direwolves would be, especially the fact that the grey wolf is the closest living relative that they know of, so, and that they've found. So they just changed the certain genes which they think, and also the genetics that they matched against the actual samples that they found in the skull and the tooth, and they just changed the certain genes to make it into a direwolf, or so they believe. And so I have a few more articles and things that I'm just going to look through and read through just to fully conceptualize whether or not it is or isn't, technically speaking, a direwolf. So yeah, this is that. So let's go. The beginnings of a real life Jurassic Park. Not really, it's a few puppies, mate. Are playing out in a high security undisclosed location. Obviously very smart. You do not want very rich people finding out where the fuck this is, because Putin will bomb it. Where 3 unusually large, fluffy white wolf pups are growing up. Yep, unusually large. That's so cool. What, 20-25% bigger than a grey wolf? That's just dope. That's like, it turned more into a fucking polar bear, is literally what it is. And even Beth Shapiro said that on the podcast. He said when he was petting the actual pups, their fur was just so thick and like kind of unsimilar to a grey wolf's, that it felt more like a polar bear cub. So that's fucking just cool, innit? The gene editing startup Colossal Biosciences, which recently raised $400 million in its de-extinction and conservation missions, is so cool that that amount of money is going towards de-extinction and conservation. Like, I'm really big on that stuff, you know. Love Forrest Glante and everything he does, and he loves Colossal, so I love it. They announced the pup's existence on Monday, saying that they are the first living direwolves since the species went exist some 12,500 years ago. So their official statement was they have brought it back. Brothers Romulus and Remus, great names for 2 wolf pups. That's just great. Born in October, followed by female pup Khaleesi in January. George R.R. Martin has had he took the pictures with them. It's gotten famous and viral over those pictures of him with direwolf pups, and that's just he's held direwolf pups before he's managed to finish the end of his goddamn book series. How is that fair? That's fair to fucking no one. He's managed to hold shit he's written about and isn't finished writing all of it. That's so dumb. But yeah, George R. R. Martin is a big sponsor and he donates, and I'm trying to look for another word that isn't sponsor and I currently can't think of it, but he's involved and he's a supporter of, like, a fucking football team, of Colossal Biosciences, so that's why he managed to get there and do the pictures with the direwolves. So come on, George, chop chop. And my original point is why it's named Khaleesi, the one female pup that they have. That's why it's called Khaleesi. And all were delivered by C-section because they were too goddamn big. It's like the opposite of Russian dolls. Imagine being that goddamn mother of those pups. You have to birth something that's already as big as you and it's already inside you. Yeah. It's like being Brian Shaw's wife. It's the first time that we see an animal that carries multiple genes from an extinct species. His name's Love. Okay. Love Dallin. Bro sounds French. A professional of evolutionary genomics who specialises in mammoth DNA and sits on Colossal Scientific Advisory Board, told Business Insider in an email. Love emails. I don't trust them. Colossal Biosciences says they are direwolves. Some geneticists say they aren't. Thank you for reiterating my original point. And some scientists said, I wouldn't call this the world's first de-extinction. I'm not necessarily against the initiative. Well done. But these are not direwolves. And even if they were real direwolves, other scientists say it may not be a good idea to bring them back. Are they fucking allergic to having fun? Do they not want fucking Jurassic Park? I want that. I don't care how many people have to die. I want children screaming from a T-Rex. That is what I want. And I want it very quickly. Colossal acknowledges its animals aren't perfect genetic matches to extinct direwolves. And go down. It is not possible to create something that is 100% genetically identical in every way to a species that used to be alive. That is said by the dude that Joe Rogan interviewed. Is that statement necessarily true? Aren't you saying you can't just, like the mammoth in the permafrost that those rich people decided to eat and then they all got sick and got the shits? Can't you just, make a sperm baby of that and just... There must be a way, right? We might not know about it, how to do it now, but there must be a way to, actually clone something. I don't care if it isn't, it should be. Though for one thing, scientists don't have a complete genome for direwolves. Shapiro said they filled in some gaps by extracting more DNA from the best available samples of direwolves, the 13,000-year-old tooth and a 72,000-year-old skull. And just to reiterate some of the things he said in the podcast, he said, with the differential being that far apart, those 50,000 years of genetics and DNA, he said there's going to be a lot of mutations over that time period, and so all you have to do is find the common denominators between those 2 points in the genome to see what are the strongest traits which were carried throughout that time. So those are the traits you obviously would hone in on to keep, to try and recreate the direwolves, which is what they ended up doing, which I just thought was really cool, and it's also a really smart way to go about it. But then that obviously means there'll be certain genetics and things which they can't actually end up pinpointing throughout, which will have been lost. So it's not necessarily the exact same as an older direwolf. In the end, Colossal says it decided to target 20 edits in 14 genes to make pups with the large size, white fur coat, extra muscular legs, and other key traits they think direwolves had. So again, it's all this thing of, it's what they think they had, given those certain traits which were passed in the actual direwolf tooth and skull. They can kind of just assume that these are traits that they had. And you're going to be basically correct on those facts. But you're not going to have everything, especially in the fact that we don't have the entirety, or they don't have the entirety of all the direwolf genome anyway. We don't have all of that anyway, so you're basically just making guesses on what you think it would have looked like, would have been, and just taking that from the genome and just making assumptions, really. So Colossal basically says what it defines as de-extincting something is the same as de-extincting lost genes and DNA samples and returning ancient DNA to newer forms. And they classify that as now making the older... Basically, taking the older DNA and having it now means it's de-extinct, because you're de-extincting the actual genes. You might not necessarily be de-extincting the animal itself, but you're taking these things that were completely lost to all DNA and all the canids and the evolutionary strand, and you're putting it back in. So you've technically de-extincted that. And other scientists have made very good points like these. This one's by Scotland. It sounds like someone tries to say Scotland with a full mouth of food. Would a chimpanzee with 20 gene edits be called human? Very good point. If you change a chimpanzee with 20 genes, it might look like a human, might fucking act like a human, but it's just a fucking chimp in it. And here's where you kind of more or less lose the argument on your definition of the direwolves. Defending your point, calling to a fictional world where they gene edited using modern things and putting them into older strands. So defending it by pointing out the film Jurassic Park, using frog DNA to fill in the gaps in the ancient dinosaur DNA sequences. If you're referencing Jurassic Park as your defense, I think most people would waver to the other side of the argument just in that sense, because you can't really use a goddamn dinosaur film as a backup. And once again, it's reiterated, it's not a direwolf, it's a clone grey wolf that they transgenetically modified to make it look like what we think direwolves look like. We don't even really know what they look like. So once again, you have an incomplete actual genetic list. You don't actually know everything about it, and you don't even know what it looked like in the first place. So multiple factors going into the fact that this isn't necessarily a direwolf. And this dude Lynch also says, with the defense of the Jurassic Park, that he doesn't believe the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park would be classified as actual dinosaurs. They'd be genetic hybrids, especially with the fact that they would take on traits of modern things such as frogs, where they could change the sex, and the velociraptors could make eggs because they could change sex. And this dude says, these are grey wolves with an impressive but ultimately small number of precise changes to their genomes. I don't think that's necessarily a defense, because I'll go back to the chimpanzee defense to go against this. The difference between us and like a chimp is fucking what? Like 3% in DNA, and that's the complete difference between us and a chimp in genes. And so when you're referring to small numbers as it is, so just referencing even smaller numbers, it's like, yeah. They've been very smart about their gene editing to try and make these direwolves as close to what they think it could have been like as possible. So I don't necessarily think that is the best defense you could say. Whereas just defending like the Jurassic Park stuff is, I think that's a far better argument to go down, instead of just singling out what they did with the genes, kind of. Even though it is about the genes, but fuck it. It might be better to think of these things as being inspired by direwolves. I don't even think that's necessarily true either. I think it's better to think of you're trying to get as close as you can with what you have. I think that's a better way to look at it, instead of being like it's inspired by, because you can't be inspired by something if you don't know what the fucking original thing was. So you've kind of just taken the pieces that you do have and just you've kind of crossed your fingers and hoped for the lotto, or that you've gotten it as well as what you think it could be like. But I think this sentence is the one that kind of sums it up more or less for like me. Bridging the divide between a grey wolf and a direwolf would require more complex alterations, like deleting whole sections of the genome. Because that basically sums up the fact that to make it a perfect one-on-one, or as possibly close as what it could be, you'd have to delete so much of what the modern things is, instead of just handpicking some of the ancient DNA and putting it into the modern things. You'd need to take a lot more away from the modern adaptations to make it far more like what it was back then. So for me personally, I think that kind of puts the nail in the coffin for whether it'd be best to define these as actual direwolves, or as... I think it'd be better to think of these more as a step in the right direction towards getting closer and closer to what these animals could be, or what we think they could have been like, especially since I think he said in the interview he's going to make 2 more, and it also just proves that they can do this and it can be successful. And especially that they're only a few months old, the older and older they grow, you're going to learn a lot more about it, especially because I believe there's not just the physical differences, and they don't even know everything about the physical differences. They've kind of just edited the genes and they've kind of just left it to see what happens, because they found the mane growing out and they didn't even know that would exist. And there's the stuff with the head shape, the cranium difference, and the legs, and they have no idea how big it could necessarily grow. They have estimates of 20-25%. It could grow bigger, it could grow smaller. They don't even know what the fuck's happening with this thing. It's kind of just you're leaving it grow like one of those fucking, those little like toys you used to leave in water and it would expand as a kid. Basically that's all they've done. They've kind of genetically engineered this thing and they just need to leave it in the water to grow, to see what the fuck happens with it. And this is like, it's the first one they've done and they've just released it. So there's definitely more editing that they could do and more precision, and as the technology advances and they get more money, especially with stuff like this, it's kind of why they directed their efforts towards these things, is to get more attention for this, as well as also just creating the animals. But yeah. But as an overall, if you're a sort of person that just defines as, if it looks like a dog, barks like a dog, acts like a dog, it's most likely a dog. This thing is a direwolf. It looks like what we think a direwolf looks like. It barks like how we think a direwolf would bark, and it most likely will act like how we think a direwolf would act, which I don't even know how that really works, because all dogs fucking work the exact same. A wolf is a wolf, and it's going to be most likely raised around its partners and just act like a fucking dog in it. But in terms of like the genome and editing genetics, it isn't necessarily a direwolf. It could be cool to think of it like a ancient roided up grey wolf, more or less. It's like if you took a Neanderthal, you squished him down and you turned him into a steroid, and you injected that into some dude, and he just got very hairy and very muscular, and his back hunched, and he got a big old head. More or less kind of what these wolves are, because they're going to replicate some things which look exactly like a direwolf, or what it most likely would have been like, but yeah, not exactly a direwolf. So yeah, let me know what you think. Tell me what animal you want next. Is it the mammoth? Is it the thylacine? Is it woolly rhino? Is it something that isn't in the fucking Arctic or Australian? Do you want a goddamn bird to fly on? Do you want some other arc shit? Let me know. And thank you for watching, and bye.